The Middle East and South Asia form a complex tapestry of strategic interests. Here, three nations, Pakistan, Iran, and Israel, represent distinct poles of power and influence. Pakistan, a populous nuclear-armed state, sits at the crossroads of Central Asia, South Asia, and the Middle East. Its stability is crucial for the entire region. Iran, a Shia Islamic republic with significant regional ambitions and a controversial nuclear program, often finds itself at odds with Western powers and their allies. Israel, a key United States ally and the region's undeclared nuclear power, views Iran's nuclear aspirations as an existential threat, creating a tense and volatile standoff that reverberates globally. This geopolitical triangle is fraught with historical grievances and modern-day anxieties. The potential for conflict, particularly one involving unconventional weapons, is a scenario that keeps defense strategists awake at night. An attack on Iran by Israel would not be a localized event. It would immediately draw in neighboring countries and global powers, threatening to ignite a wider, more devastating war. Pakistan's role in such a crisis would be pivotal. Its shared border with Iran, its status as the sole Muslim-majority country with nuclear weapons, and its intricate web of alliances would place it in an extraordinarily difficult position, forcing it to make choices with far-reaching consequences for international peace and security. The international community watches this dynamic with bated breath. The United States maintains a delicate relationship with Pakistan, viewing it as a partner in counter-terrorism, while also expressing concern over its nuclear arsenal. At the same time, America's ironclad support for Israel and its deep-seated animosity toward Iran's clerical regime create a complex diplomatic field. Any military action would test these relationships to their limits. For Pakistan, the challenge would be to navigate these turbulent waters without compromising its own national security or getting drawn into a catastrophic conflict that would destabilize its already fragile western border and economy. The central question, therefore, is not merely speculative, but a critical exercise in strategic foresight. If the unthinkable were to happen, a nuclear strike by Israel on Iranian soil, how would Pakistan react? Its response would be shaped by a delicate interplay of religious solidarity, national interest, strategic calculations, and international pressure. It would have to weigh its historical ties with Iran against its pragmatic relationships with the United States and Gulf Arab states. Understanding Pakistan's potential actions requires a deep dive into its relationship with Iran, its carefully crafted nuclear doctrine, and the immense pressures it would face from all sides in such a dire scenario. The relationship between Pakistan and Iran is one of profound complexity, a mix of cooperation and competition rooted in shared geography, faith, and culture. As neighbors with a long, porous border, they are inextricably linked. Iran was the first country to recognize Pakistan's independence in 1947, and for decades, the two nations were close allies under the Baghdad Pact, which later became CENTO. This historical goodwill forms a foundational layer of their relationship. Yet this bond is not without its strains. The 1979 Iranian Revolution introduced a new dynamic with sectarian differences, Pakistan's Sunni majority and Iran's Shia theocracy, occasionally fueling proxy tensions, particularly in Afghanistan and within Pakistan itself. Despite these undercurrents, pragmatism often prevails. Economic interests are a significant driver of cooperation. The Iran-Pakistan gas pipeline project, though hampered by international sanctions on Tehran, remains a symbol of their shared desire for energy security and economic integration. Cross-border trade, both formal and informal, is a lifeline for communities on both sides of the frontier. Security cooperation is another critical pillar. Both nations have a vested interest in managing the volatile situation in the border region of Balochistan, where separatist and militant groups operate. This shared threat necessitates a degree of intelligence sharing and coordinated security measures, even when diplomatic ties are tested. However, their foreign policy alignments create significant divergence. Pakistan maintains a close, albeit often turbulent, strategic partnership with the United States, and deep-seated ties with Saudi Arabia, Iran's primary regional rival. This balancing act requires a delicate diplomatic dance. Islamabad cannot afford to alienate its powerful Gulf allies or its Western partners, yet it must also manage its relationship with its immediate neighbor. This has led to a policy of careful neutrality in the broader Saudi-Iran rivalry, where Pakistan has often sought to act as a mediator rather than taking sides, positioning itself as a force for regional stability. This nuanced relationship means that while there is a degree of solidarity, it is not an unconditional alliance. Pakistan's official position on Israel is one of non-recognition, aligning with much of the Muslim world and reflecting strong domestic sentiment. However, its support for the Palestinian cause is primarily diplomatic. An attack on Iran would thus trigger a response born from this complex history. It would evoke a sense of shared Islamic identity and neighborly obligation, but this would be heavily tempered by the pragmatic realities of its other crucial alliances and the overriding imperative to protect its own national interests from the ensuing chaos. Pakistan's nuclear weapons program is the cornerstone of its national security strategy. It was developed in response to a perceived existential threat from its larger neighbor, India, particularly after India's Smiling Buddha nuclear test in 1974. The program's singular purpose from its inception has been deterrence. Pakistan's official policy is one of credible minimum deterrence, meaning it seeks to maintain a nuclear arsenal sufficient to deter aggression from any adversary, not to engage in a nuclear war. This doctrine is fundamentally defensive. The weapons are seen as an ultimate guarantor of national sovereignty, a shield against conventional military superiority, not a sword for offensive action. The command and control of these strategic assets are held under a tight, multi-layered structure known as the National Command Authority, or NCA. Headed by the Prime Minister, the NCA includes senior civilian and military leaders who are collectively responsible for all aspects of nuclear policy, development, and deployment. This structure is designed to ensure responsible stewardship and prevent any unauthorized or accidental use. Pakistan has consistently stated that its nuclear weapons are for self-defense only, and would only be used if the country's very existence were at stake. This high threshold for use is a critical element of its strategic posture, aimed at reassuring the international community of its responsible custodianship. Crucially, Pakistan has not subscribed to a no-first-use policy, unlike India's declared stance. This ambiguity is intentional. By not ruling out the first use of nuclear weapons, Pakistan aims to deter a large-scale conventional attack from India that could threaten to overwhelm its forces. However, this policy is specifically tailored to the Indo-Pakistani dynamic. There is no indication that Pakistan has ever contemplated extending a nuclear umbrella to any other nation, including Iran. To do so would fundamentally alter its defensive doctrine, invite unimaginable international backlash, and dramatically increase the risk of nuclear escalation, all of which run contrary to its core security interests. Therefore, the idea of Pakistan using its nuclear arsenal to retaliate on behalf of Iran is virtually unthinkable. Its nuclear weapons are the nation's last resort, a tool to ensure its own survival, not to protect an ally. While an Israeli nuclear attack on Iran would be viewed with extreme alarm in Islamabad, the response would be channeled through diplomatic and political avenues. The Pakistani leadership understands that crossing the nuclear threshold for any reason other than a direct existential threat to Pakistan itself would be an act of national suicide, leading to devastating retaliation and complete international isolation. Its nuclear doctrine simply does not allow for such a scenario. In the horrifying event of an Israeli nuclear attack on Iran, Pakistan's reaction would be swift, loud, but ultimately constrained by strategic reality. The most immediate response would be diplomatic. Pakistan would issue the strongest possible condemnation, framing the attack as a catastrophic breach of international law and a crime against humanity. It would call for emergency sessions of the United Nations Security Council and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, seeking to galvanize global opinion against Israel. This diplomatic offensive would be aimed at isolating Israel, demanding accountability, and positioning Pakistan as a leading voice for the Muslim world, thereby reinforcing its own regional standing. Militarily, Pakistan's actions would be defensive and precautionary. It would almost certainly place its own military, including its strategic forces, on high alert. This would not be a preparatory step to join the conflict but a defensive measure to secure its own borders and deter any potential spillover or miscalculation by other regional actors. The long and porous border with Iran would become a primary security concern, with fears of a massive refugee influx, cross-border militant activity, and the spread of radioactive fallout. The Pakistani military would be deployed to seal the border, manage the humanitarian crisis, and ensure that the chaos engulfing Iran does not destabilize its own territory. Direct military intervention to aid Iran is highly improbable. Pakistan lacks the expeditionary capability and more importantly, the political will to engage in a direct conflict with Israel and by extension its powerful allies like the United States. Such a move would be economically ruinous, invite crippling international sanctions, and risk devastating retaliatory strikes. The risks would far outweigh any potential benefits. Instead, Pakistan might provide covert and humanitarian support, such as medical aid, intelligence on regional military movements, and safe havens for certain Iranian officials. But it would stop short of any action that could be construed as direct entry into the war. Ultimately, Pakistan's most likely course of action would be a carefully calibrated strategy of loud condemnation, robust diplomatic action, and defensive military posturing. Its primary goal would be self-preservation. It would seek to contain the crisis, protect its borders, and navigate the treacherous new geopolitical landscape. While domestic pressure and a sense of Islamic solidarity would demand a strong response, the nation's leadership would be acutely aware that its survival depends on avoiding direct entanglement in a nuclearized conflict. Pakistan would walk a tightrope, expressing outrage and solidarity while ensuring its own national security remains the paramount objective, a pragmatic path through an unprecedented global crisis.